Good evening, and thank you all for joining us here at the McNay tonight. My name is Matthew McClendon, and as the director and CEO of the McNay, it is my pleasure to welcome you to a conversation and book signing with Sandy Skoglund. We have an illuminating discussion in store with Sandy and René Barilleaux, who will delve into the creative process and key themes of our fall banner exhibition, Sandy Skoglund, Enchanting Nature. We encourage you to stay after the conversation to purchase the stunning book which accompanies the exhibition and to get it signed by Sandy. Before I introduce our speakers, please take a moment to silence your phones. You are welcome to capture moments of this event and share them on social media. We ask that you please tag @McNayArt. Sandy Skoglund is a sculptor, photographer, and installation artist, working with a variety of unconventional materials. The evocative, immersive scenes she creates explore tensions between the man-made and the natural worlds. Sandy's relationship with the McNay dates back to 2006, when the museum purchased her work, Gathering Paradise. The exhibition, Enchanting Nature, features several of Sandy's career highlights, including her large-scale installations, Radioactive Cats, and Revenge of the Goldfish. Joining these is the never-before-seen installation, Fresh Hybrid, and her recent series, The Outtakes, showcasing formerly dismissed photographs of her past work. Sandy's exhibition has been fascinating the McNay's guests since its opening in September, and we are excited to hear more about it tonight. Joining Sandy, we have someone who probably needs no introduction at the McNay, René Barilleaux. René joined the McNay's curatorial team in 2005 and served as the museum's head of curatorial affairs from 2017 until his well-earned retirement this past September. With over 40 years of curatorial experience, his expertise and passion radically influenced the McNay. He expanded the museum's post-war and contemporary art collection, overseeing the acquisition of over 200 new works of art by artists such as Carrie Mae Weems, Robert Indiana, and of course, Sandy Skoglund. René worked closely with Sandy to bring Enchanting Nature to life, and we are delighted to have him back to speak about this experience. We would like to thank the following individuals who helped bring Enchanting Nature to fruition: Francisco Garcia, Lauren Thompson, Leslie Strauss, David Garver, Andre Renteria, Katia Rodriguez, Joe De La Cruz, Carlos Perez, Mario Perez, and Nick Asikis. We would also like to thank our presenting sponsor for the exhibition, Bank of America, as well as acknowledge our lead funding provided by the Arthur and Jane Steeren Fund for Exhibitions and the Elizabeth Huth Coates Charitable Foundation of 1992. On a personal note, as a young art historian, I vividly remember the afternoon I was sitting in my Art History 2 survey, which, for those in the room old enough to remember, covers the 19th century through the present day. The lecture was on postmodern and constructed photography. In those days, when you got to what was known as constructed photography in your survey, you were generally shown two images to illustrate it. One would be a Cindy Sherman untitled film still. The other would be Sandy Skoglund's Radioactive Cats. I remember being completely taken aback that afternoon by Radioactive Cats. It was so unlike anything I had seen at that early point in what would become a career of looking. Along with the work of Ed and Nancy Kienholz, which was also introduced in that course, Radioactive Cats radically opened up for me what art could be. In short, Sandy Skoglund helped change how I see. I am enormously grateful and humbled that these many years later, I have the opportunity to visit Radioactive Cats daily, and I am even more grateful to now say that I know Sandy Skoglund. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Sandy Skoglund and René Barilleaux.
I want to first of all welcome our audience tonight. So thank you all for being here, and welcome Sandy back to the McNay. She's been here a couple of times before, so it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
We have a lot to cover tonight. We want to talk about a lot of things, so we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
We are doing this conversation, obviously, to celebrate the exhibition, Enchanting Nature. I'm hoping that most of you saw the exhibition before coming to this talk. Sandy, I want to start by talking about the title, Enchanting Nature, because I know we talked about a lot of different titles, and there was something very specific about this phrasing that you were interested in.
Well, enchanting goes back to the Latin word enchante, which is to draw in through sound. It was the sirens who would call the sailors to the rocks of their destination in Latin mythology. And I love the word because I spent a year in Paris when I was young, in undergraduate, and they greet each other by saying enchanted, enchanté, which is charming to me. And I wanted to talk about the idea of philosophically how it is that we cope with the world as we move through it. How do we survive? Because in a way, all the work in the show, to me, is about survival. Each of the elements is surviving, not necessarily in a difficult atmosphere, but nevertheless surviving. We are survivors, and part of our survival mechanism is our mental imagination as it plays upon the world around us. And we enchant nature, nature being reality. We enchant it. We bring it to life. We make it maybe rosier than it is sometimes. But these are all like important survival tools. And so that's where the title comes from.
Great. Just let's backtrack a little and talk about where you came from, where you went to schools, a little biographical information, so kind of set the stage for where we're going.
Right, right. So, well, where I came from is 1946.
Thank you for that.
There was a sperm and an egg. And the post-war baby boom, the whole thing, every little last drop of that was my upbringing. I think, honestly, one of the most impactful things for me was having had polio when I was 3, because I was hospitalized and quarantined along with my brother. It was 49. It was before any of the vaccines. And I am sure, without being able to reflect, but I do have a few memories of a nurse, for example, lying to me. I remember a nurse lying to me, and I was crying for my mother. I was in the ward, the hospital ward. We were we were quarantined in the floating hospital for children, and I was crying for my mother. A nurse comes over and says, "I'm going to go over there and call your mother, and she's going to come over, and you're going to stop crying." So I stopped crying, and the nurse goes over to the phone on the wall, ding-a-ling-a-ling, you know, I see it in the distance, and she comes back and she says, "I called your mother, she'll be right over." I wait and I wait and I wait and I wait, hours and hours, and she never comes. And so at a 3-year-old, all is not what it appears to be in terms of my philosophy of life. But then fast forward to summer jobs, because what I like to do is I like to throw myself into the culture. So I actively looked for jobs. Everyone in my family worked all the time. We always had this job and that job, all of our kids, my brother and 2 sisters. But I picked out somewhat esoteric ones, like working in a bakery factory in Detroit, night shift on an assembly line, decorating cakes. And another job was working at the Space Bar in Tomorrowland in Anaheim when I was in high school. So there already was a sense of pop culture, interest in the popular culture that was present and has always been with me.
And work ethic.
Work, I love work. I live for work. work to me in terms of a chosen struggle. I mean, it has to be a chosen struggle. It's not just work. It's not just, working for somebody or just making money. It's the chosen struggle of it that to me is a philosophy that I live by.
And then where did you study?
I studied, I went to high school in Orange, California. We moved around the United States, so I ended up at Smith College, where it's a long story, but I would credit art history, because growing up in the American suburbs in the 50s and 60s, we never went to museums. I didn't even know what museums were. So my sort of visual field was a visual field of comic books and fashion. And when I went to Smith College, it was art history. It was like, wow. It was like, here is a story that really I can maybe participate in. Mm-hmm. So Smith College, and then I taught junior high school to make money to go to grad school, and I taught that in Batavia, Illinois. But then after that, went to the University of Iowa, which was incredibly great, wonderful school. Graduated in '72 in painting, never studied photography. And then moved to New York in 72, 73.
And you stayed there till?
Stayed in Manhattan. I love New York, so I found my home.
And we're looking at Gathering Paradise.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first photograph that the McNay acquired of your work. We bought it in 2006, as Matthew mentioned.
Yep.
Let's just talk just a little bit about sort of what you do. Like, what is your art making process?
Well, I mean, it really is daydreaming. I don't know how else, that in one word, that's really what it is. So it's not as if this image I saw and then I made it. No, I didn't see the image and then make it. I saw like 1% of it. And the 1% was enough to take the one step forward and kind of get out of bed, as it were, and to take the steps towards actually making the things that go into it. In this case, I was fascinated with squirrels. So the squirrels came first, not the patio. The people in this piece were friends of mine. The fellow sitting down underneath the umbrella was Mike, who ran the hardware store on Elizabeth Street. And the two people inside the house they passed away, were friends of mine from the Hartford Art School.
So when we're looking at your photograph here, we're actually looking at something that you built and realized in full three-dimensional space, right?
Yeah, that what you see was right there on Broome Street in 1991, yeah.
Let's go back. We're going to keep going in terms of the McNay's acquisitions. After we acquired Gathering Paradise in 2011, we acquired the Cocktail Party, both the installation version, which you see here, and then the photograph. We've shown that a number of times. We'll show that again next spring in a big survey of the collection. So stay tuned for next spring to see the Cocktail Party come back out. And then we exhibited Winter. This is more recently. This is just after the pandemic, 2001. Yep. This was part of a group show. Uh-huh. This was one of the more recent installations you've kind of finished.
Yes. This was primarily done in the computer. This was,
what do you mean
I love to learn. Well, I like to learn. A part of this chosen struggle thing that I get involved with is not knowing. Something about not knowing is exciting to me. So I decided I wanted to learn how to sculpt in the computer. So back in 2000 and around 1, 2, and 3, I started to go down that journey. So the three-dimensional sculptures here are real. So it was turning it inside out. So it's not AI, it's IA. I did it. But But you have the type of work I was doing, because there's so many different ways of using the computer. Anyway, I learned how to make files in my head, sculpting in my head, visualizing a figure, and then you can kind of draw it in certain applications, and you have to have the right application, and then essentially you send the file out, it comes back. So it is executed by someone else, but I made the file. So it's not AI in the sense where you say, I want to make a blue woman with her hands in her face. I sculpted all that and then sent the file out, and then it came back. Same thing with the owls.
And then we acquired the photograph version just, I think, in 2024, just very recently.
Right.
So let's talk about the people in the work.
Sure.
There are always people in the work,
Right.
And talk a little about how those people get into the work.
Well, I didn't see people in the work in the beginning.
Okay.
So when I first did Radioactive Cats, I actually did it with and without people. And prior to Radioactive Cats, there was a short series of found objects, of plates and saucers and things like that. Same thing, very photographic, very much about the camera, rectangle, things all over, exploding visually. And I found that when I took the picture without someone in it, you didn't know what you were looking at. Once the photograph was detached from anything and you just saw this image, it was like, what am I looking at? And I didn't want it to be that much of a mystery. I feel as though I want the viewer to have enough clues that they can walk themselves through the work. Just through their own intelligence. They don't have to read a certain book or whatever, just their own visual intelligence allows them to kind of understand what they're looking at. So a person in there is what's called an objective correlative. It's like a ruler. And generally speaking, you have an idea of how big people are.
Right.
And then that led to a narrative aspect that I was able to kind of work in.
So let's go back to two seminal installations. This is from 1980 on the left and 81 on the right.
Yeah.
And these sort of became the moment sort of people sort of saw your work and identified it as your work, right?
Right, yeah.
And it was part of a kind of Matthew mentioned something a bit about this moment in photography when artists were creating for the camera.
Right.
Right. And were you thinking about that at the time, or were you just making your work, or how is your relationship to that movement happening?
I was 100% riveted on postmodern photography, and the feeling in the cool galleries, and among younger generation of people, there was this whole group of people who were not only interested in photography, but they were also interested in why is commercialism so abhorrent? Because with modernism, Matthew, I'm sure you recall, at least what I learned, was that with modernism, nothing should be done for money. It's just, it just stems from the Romantic era, 19th century, wherein we can look back to history and we can say, when did human beings start to think that they had their own thoughts and their own inner necessity? Well, we can trace it to the Romantic period in the 19th century of, I have to do this. I have this inner necessity to do this. And so as a result of that, then I felt as though I had to make my own sculptures as well as take my own photographs.
So you did all these yourself?
I did. I felt I had to take ownership of the making as well as the photography.
And then you said you didn't study photography, so you taught yourself photography?
I taught myself photography by, day by day, failing, yes, no, take it by. I mean, honestly, I learned photography in the photography stores of New York City in the 80s. I mean, in 1980, I have to back up to 78, 79, and 80. Those 3 years, those photo stores around 34th Street were packed with all of my fellow photographers, all buying film and paper and chemistry, and it was just a madhouse. And Joel, who was behind the counter there at Olden Camera, I would go to Joel and I would say, Joel, why doesn't this look the way I want it to look? And I remember one day he said, well, haven't you ever heard of painting?
But that didn't stop you.
Well, I had my degree in painting, so I have heard of it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, and it was painful, but it was fun, and it was a chosen struggle, like I mentioned before. I mean, and it was great.
And so Radioactive Cats was the first installation, and that was made in your apartment, was it right?
It was the first installation. Prior to that, I was in the same room, same apartment, and it was next to where I was living on Elizabeth Street. And in that room, I was also doing still life, food still lifes that were parodies of the methodology of commercial photography, because I was talking about the fact that there was this postmodern idea challenging the pristine notion that, you know, money is horrible. And commercialism is, you know, going to kill us all or whatever. And there was a kind of a parting of ways. There were some artists whose work critiqued commercialism. And in my case, I embraced commercialism in terms of the technique. So that's why they look the way they look. That's why they're sharp focused, they're high saturated. They're like an advertisement, but not for anything.
And in these early works, or in many of the works, you have a two-color palette, is that right? And
yeah.
was that a choice, and what was the choice to limit your palette so strictly?
It was to provide a photograph that looks like a photograph but would never be a photograph in reality. Because what defines, again, you have to remember these were normal photographs with the full palette of red, green, yellow, blue, you know, landscape and so on. I mean, this was the world that I was making my photographs within. So by limiting the colors, I was taking a photograph, but I was taking it away from a normal photograph. Mm-hmm. I was kind of erasing that palette.
So here we see the recent installation here at the McNay of Radioactive Cats. Mm-hmm. We can see how, so when you go to set up the installations, you know, this is from 1980, so over time, your way it resonates with you changes. So each installation is different, is that right, in terms of the way you present them to the public in a gallery situation?
I think that's definitely true. I mean, of all art in any museum, there's always going to be that kind of arranging and whatever. With installation art, because you're making a kind of a work of art within a work of art, right? You're curating the artwork within the gallery. So each time, no matter where you would do it, it would, whether by me or someone else, you would be curating and changing, making it look as best as you can based on your visual thinking.
Now, we're very fortunate that Smith College owns both Radioactive Cats installation and Revenge of the Goldfish installation. Yeah. We're able to lend them for the exhibition.
Yes.
And so those were sort of cornerstones for what evolves in your work. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes.
And so what was it like kind of re-hanging those after all this time, sort of seeing them with this eyes of 2025?
Well, it was fine. I feel as though I'm finally showing them the way I really want to show them. That the earlier incarnations were satisfactory. I mean, the very first time I exhibited this piece was at Castelli Gallery on 77th Street in January of 1981, and it was a nice high ceiling. It is a townhouse But it was, I hadn't yet thought about people walking through it or within it or among it. Although I wanted that, I certainly, why would I go to all that trouble of hanging, doing that three-dimensional display? But I feel now as though this is really the kind of ultimate fruition, really, of the work. Mm-hmm. It's very satisfying.
So the work we're premiering is Fresh Hybrid.
Yeah.
So Fresh Hybrid was originally conceived, and the photograph was made in 2008. So here we are in 2025, and you're now showing the actual installation.
Right.
So where has this installation been, and what steps did you have to take to get it here?
Well, I finished it and put it into storage in my studio, which is it's a large studio. So I finished it. What does it mean to finish it? I finished the photograph.
Okay.
And that was because I was working very closely with an Italian gallery at the time, and they were going to premiere this piece as a photograph. It was a photography gallery. And so once that was done, I just packed up the installation and kind of moved on to a variety of other things. So the installation never really got beyond my own studio.
Mm-hmm. 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 And did you have any intention of going back to finish it, or was it just kind of sitting there?
At the time, you mean?
Or since then? I mean,
finishing it. What do you mean?
Or going back and reinstalling it somewhere? I mean.
Oh, you mean as if
an exhibition somewhere?
You mean aside from here?
Yes, aside from here.
Oh, aside from here. Actually, no. I mean, it was there, and I just thought when you and I first talked about the show, I thought, I know your space so well. It's such a beautiful, the dimensions, the proportions of this gallery are just amazing. And I just could see more than one installation easily in there. And I thought it was, for me, a great opportunity, really, to bring the piece out into the open and to, have it be seen, really.
I think the next image is of the photographic version. And we can see how kind of different the composition is between the installation.
Yep.
Wait, hold on, let me see.
Mm-hmm.
The installation and the photograph, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here the installation is much more kind of three-dimensional, and the visitor can kind of walks around as opposed to the sort of tableau which you're facing.
Right, exactly, yep.
And then you have this dog. Mm-hmm. Had you worked with live animals before?
No.
Have you worked with live animals since?
No, I mean, why did I sculpt all the cats, right? No, I mean, I would have used live cats. Cats and dogs are different. I would have used live cats. I love cats. I did radioactive cats because I like cats, but I do. I love cats, and I had some cats, but photographically at the time, back in those days, I was using long shutter speeds and this and that, and you can't control cats, shapes, the colors. So so come to this period of time, and that's a second cousin of mine and his wife and their son in this, and I went to visit them in their home in New Jersey. They had this wonderful dog, very lovely, compliant, loving dog, and I thought this is a great opportunity to have an actual animal seeing, in the piece, experiencing the work. So I had them. I included that in the piece. Yeah.
So here's some images from your studio. You're working.
Uh-huh.
So tell us about your working process, your kind of daily. When you're in your studio, do you have assistants, that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, this particular piece, every piece has its own shape and trajectory and what have you. I mean, very early days, I did everything myself. I loved doing it. It was just get up and go to work and do it. And then as time went on, especially when it's found objects, I mean, if it's sculpted objects, like, for example, the squirrels, I mean, I sculpted the squirrels. I mean, I wanted that, my handwork there. I wanted that kind of, involvement, personal involvement. Found objects are a whole other discussion. Found objects can be often lead to a feeling of numbness on the part of the spectator because maybe it's mass manufactured. What I find interesting about this piece and the use of the chicks is it doesn't lead to numbness because of the kitsch quality of the chicks. And most artists that I know, I love kitsch. And what is it? What is kitsch? I mean, there are books, so many books written about it, theory this, theory that. And inevitably, they kind of speak to us, I think, of some kind of primal innocence that we, through the processes of sophistication and culture, have lost touch with. And that's why I think kitsch has a kind of odd resonance for us that's different from mass manufactured like plastic spoons.
What came first, the chicks or the trees?
The chicks, for
the chicks.
Sure.
So you had the chicks, right? You had the chicks?
I bought the chicks first. That was step one. Yeah.
And did you know what you were going to do with chicks?
What?
Did you know what you were going to do with the chicks?
No, I just knew I loved them and I had to have them.
Do you work with an assistant?
Yes, I do. I mean, again, back in 1978, 79, 80, 81, it was all me, no assistants. I mean, with Revenge of the Goldfish, I was in some little 4 by 8 foot little tiny studio in a ceramic studio making fish by fish by fish.
And there are over 100 of those.
Yeah, and I remember I was with Castelli Gallery at that time, and I remember a collector calling up and saying, I want to bring my collectors to your studio to see what you're doing. I mean, like this little ceramic studio, you know, with all these potters and me making fish. So no, that didn't quite work out. But with found objects, I just want to say that with this piece and with lots of other pieces that I've done that are more recent, of course, absolutely, I do use assistants, yes. Yeah.
And I think the next image we have is here when you're installing.
That's right.
Here.
Yeah.
And could you kind of talk a little about the process of installing these three simultaneous installations?
Right.
Which all demands your attention and your focus.
Oh, well, that's kind of you to say. This piece was by far the easiest to install, and that's maybe because it was more recent and I had a feeling for it. I knew that it had really never seen the day of light. I think artists who are here in the audience, I mean, your artwork does actually have a voice. I mean, it has a life. It speaks to you, I think. So this piece had a life that was never like given it because it was in storage. And so I knew had been listening to that, and I just knew instinctively it really was not hard to work with this. And the wall, which is all these pipe cleaner, blue pipe cleaners, the wall was installed by your installer under my direction, but ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So this piece was very well thought out between myself and Francisco, my current assistant.
But I know that elements moved around a lot because from day to day I would see the trees migrate from one part of it.
No, more over
there. And the people would migrate too.
Yeah, right, yeah. No, true. And just the whole island, the whole notion of the islands in this whole show was a floating, changing thing. So that's true.
I'm glad you brought up the islands because that sort of leads into the next part of this discussion, and it's about some innovations that took place in the way you present your work. Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to go to this next slide, which is a picture of our lobby.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the wallpaper.
Okay, yeah. Well, you brought it up, and I thought, my first thought was, oh, I mean, I was very taken aback, but my very next thought was, this is really so revolutionary for me, because up to that point it had really been a fairly large photograph, then a larger, but always in a frame, and all of that kind of stuff.
It's clearly a photograph.
Yes, within a rectangle.
Not based on the architecture.
Right, a window
Right.
that you're looking through. And once you're talking about this, which is a wall, it's a wall and a window. So I just thought it was a great conceptual opportunity. And when I saw the sketches that came from I forget who was working on that at the time, doing the layout for the show.
Oh, yeah, Lauren was working on it. Lauren
Yeah.
Thompson was doing
Yeah.
work on that. And so you identified this kind of crop, right, out of Revenge of the Goldfish. You
Right.
identified the exact cropping of this.
Right.
And then we fabricated the wallpaper, installed it, and you didn't see it for the first time until it was already installed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what was your response there? What were you?
Well, it was very disorienting, the scale, and here again it was like the fruition of all of my ambition 30, 40 years ago, because all of my energy from a photographer's point of view has always been to capture the most information possible at the time, 8 by 10 inch film, large film, whatever cumbersome technology is required to get that data. Not that you can translate it right then and there, but for the future. And that's why this looks the way it does, because of that original capture. Same thing here.
So this is the original Revenge.
Yeah.
Radioactive Cats photograph.
Yes. Yeah.
That we're seeing on the wall.
That's right.
And the installation.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that we had a lot of discussion about this, and we made a decision not to show the photograph version of Fresh Hybrid Radioactive Cats or Revenge of the Goldfish.
Right.
Only as wallpaper.
Right.
So nowhere did those iconic photographs
Right.
appear.
They're like erased. Yeah.
When they're
Yeah.
presented here as
Right.
a
Yeah.
fragment of wallpaper.
Yeah. Go look somewhere else.
Now the other thing that I think was new for you was the way you made these paths into the installations, right?
Yes, yeah. That was, again, the collaborative. I remember distinctly you and I collaborating on that. And we just seemed to emotionally agree that the idea here would be to be able to walk inside what, if you want to call it photograph, you could, but inside the sculpture as well. When I think of the sculptors whose work was influencing me back in the 70s, that would be George Siegel or Kienholz. Neither of those sculptors, Kienholz to some extent you would walk into Barney's Beanery and so on, but there wasn't as much of this sense of walking into the sculpture. So here, being able to be surrounded by the sculpture, it is very gratifying.
Now I want to talk about these other things that are in the show. This is really part of the introduction for the viewer. In this first gallery or chamber, we called it, which has the outtakes, which is a series of photographs, and then some shadow box sculptures, and then some also freestanding sculptures. So let's start with the outtakes. Mm-hmm. If you could maybe just clue the audience into what the outtakes are, how that happened and what they're about.
Well, during COVID, I was cleaning up my studio, and I've spoke earlier about the idea that your work has a life that speaks to you. At least that's been my recent experience. So I found old negatives from photo shoots, and I'm going, well, why didn't I choose that one? And that was during that whole silence of COVID, and for me, I was really happy to have the time to clean up and do things other than just charge forward with new work. And out of that came the outtakes, because I just felt as though this work that I found that had been canceled out by me, it was like, no. It was like, well, why not? And why that one and not that one? So the whole notion of how I made the original decisions, which were made very quickly, I remember that, and having more time to contemplate the work, contemplate the rejects, that's where the outtakes come from.
So the idea of mistakes
Yes.
is something that's in your work.
Well, we have skipped over the 70s in my work here, and this is from '74 when I was at the Hartford Art School, and when I first moved to New York in '72, it was in the thrall of minimalism, conceptualism. There was no figuration. Figuration was a laughing stock. It was very extreme notion, very moralistic about idea over form, idea over material. And many of us who were very involved in this were reading these heavy philosophy books, and even the art magazines were chock full of all this kind of stuff. And so my work during that time took the shape of mistakes. And you see here two bodies of work. The review from the Art Forum from '74 is mistake drawings. So what I did is I did lines, and then on top of the line, I made another line, and when the line did not go over the line, that was a mistake. So I tried to follow myself in a very passive, way, make a perfect line on top of another line. And the drawing then is the circles where all the mistakes are. And then my very early photo work, which is just some little found camera, I don't know what it was at the time, was driving around on cloudy days in Maine, and I just noticed all these mistakes in the highway. The yellow lines and the white lines, those are mistakes. And then there's the errors of the hopefully not too bad accidents of the swerving lines and stuff. So I was doing kind of both of those at the same time.
So we're going to look at some of the outtakes just a little closer.
Right.
So here on the left, you have the photograph, right?
Yes.
Radioactive cats.
Yeah.
And on the right, you have the outtake.
Right. Yep.
So what are we seeing that's different?
Well, the whole idea behind the early work was very photographic in that it was the whole negative, the entire 8x10 or 4x5, no cropping. Part of that was the purity of photography at the time. There was a lot of language about that. Don't crop, it's sort of post-production. So keep it to the original capture. So that's what you see on the left. And anything that wasn't perfect then at that moment in terms of what the camera was doing was rejected. So on the right, what happened is the camera drifted to the right and it took in the silver pipe there on the right. So that would have been a no-no. The other thing is it is cropped top and bottom, mostly on the top. And my landlady, who's the woman going into the refrigerator, she was my landlady at the time, she would have been, I would have not liked that at the time because she was very distracting. Meaning your eye, when you look at the picture on the right, your eye goes to that arm, not to my sculptures. And what I wanted the viewer to do was to look at each cat and realize that each cat was handmade and different, similarity and difference. And so anything that the models were doing that detracted from that would have been edited out. So that's what's going on with this outtake.
So then we have the outtake on the right from Revenge of the Goldfish. So when you're making these photographs, when you're photographing the installation, as you build the installation, you have the camera in place?
Yes, yes. So here I did these installations, and then I got my camera, and I went and I took pictures. That's what people generally do. But what I decided to do was the opposite. So back in 1980, when I did Radioactive Cats, here with Revenge of the Goldfish, I put the camera down very first. And I created the architectural space through the camera with nothing in it. So at some point, there's a picture of a blue space with no fish. I don't know if I still have that negative. I probably don't. But in any event, there would have been such a thing. And then piece by piece, which I just thought was just counterproductive and silly and strange, but I could do it all by myself, which I loved, you know, just going in there, put a fish in, take a picture, look through the camera, you know, just the whole kind of, I guess the word is uncanniness of the activity intrigued me. So yes, the camera went down first in all of my known work, and then it gets filled up.
And in this photograph, so in the outtake, the boy, the young boy has a goldfish on his shoulder.
Yes. So what happened there is that this was very early on, so there were only a few outtakes, as with Radioactive Cats. And so what happened is that I am sculpting fish, and I'm going, what are the fish doing? Are they just swimming? What are they doing? And I was loving horror films at the time, because I was asking myself, what is the raison d'etre of horror films? Why do they even exist? Why do people, you know, knowingly and willingly put themselves into a situation where they're feeling this terror and fear? And again, it goes back to that primal thing that we've lost, right? But back to this, I was sculpting the fish thinking they're going to be crawling over the people. That was what I was doing as I was sculpting. So they come in. It's a mother and her son. She was a very good friend of mine from Hartford Art School, and so she goes and lays down, and he sits on the bed. That was all where they could be in this picture, because they had to be careful of all the ceramic fish. And so I got a fish out, and I put it on his shoulder, and he flinched, like it really bothered him. And I took the picture. He's slightly blurry, but I felt like I can't really continue to put fish on him. I mean, it's bothering him. So there's only one and maybe one more, I'm not sure. But that's why that's an outtake. So back when I was, you know, quickly deciding this is what I'm doing, this is the picture, I edited it out.
And you can see on the left where the
wall.
The wall stopped, the painting
where the
stopped.
whole thing ends.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then here we have Fresh Hybrid and this outtake.
Yep.
And here in the outtake, the dog.
The dog walked in, and he was terrified, so my cousin picked him up to comfort him, and yeah, I mean, I always like to think about who's looking at whom, right? When it comes to animals, and those of us that have companion animals, they're looking at us, and they're having thoughts and feelings, and it's, you know, what their worldview is. So, yeah.
And then another kind of recent innovation was the creation of these shadow boxes and then the small scale sculptures.
Mm-hmm. And it's really just all of this is very small, manageable objects. Tabletop types of things, very different from an installation or a photograph, but kind of bring into the world the three-dimensional thinking of my work.
And then we're going to finish up with the book. that goes along with this. So tell us about how the kind of the genesis of this project.
Well, I was in a show in Italy that was curated by Maurizio Catalan, and I was really happy to be in that show. And the publisher of the catalog was Damiani, and I worked closely with Damiani on that,
and they're
on
an
that
Italian
catalog.
publisher.
Yeah, the one,
right.
Damiani's the publisher of this book too, sorry. And so they approached me after having worked on the other catalog, which was not my work per se. It was, I'm in a group show with a lot of other artists, but we had a good rapport, and so they approached me to do a catalog of anything. They didn't know we were doing the show. And I told them about the show, and I said, well, you know, there isn't enough time. We're opening in 6 months, but they just were very persistent. I said, well, the most important thing about the whole book will be photographs of the installation of the show at the museum. Those will be new, they'll never have been seen before, and that's really important that they be in the book. So that's what we have in the book.
So the book serves as a record of the ephemeral nature of the show,
yeah.
And that's an important document for us and all of us here.
Yes.
I think we've reached our time here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing so much of
Thank
your story
you.
and
Thank
your
you.
insights.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you very much.